He laughed while tightening the handcuffs, not because the man resisted. He didn't. Not because it was funny, but because to him it always was, when someone like that tried to act calm, polite, respectable. But what the officer didn't realize was that this wasn't just another black man walking home from work. He was a national hero, and beneath that worn-out hoodie, pressed against the skin he was being judged for, was a military medal that once saved lives under enemy fire. At that moment, the only thing more powerful than the officer's badge was the truth he was about to uncover, because prejudice doesn't ask questions, but truth doesn't ask permission. If you believe respect should never depend on skin color or a uniform, like, subscribe, and comment. Salute the truth. The flashing red and blue lights lit up the cracked sidewalk like a crime scene. But there was no crime, just a man walking home. Isaiah Reed had just finished a 12-hour shift at the auto shop. Grease still clung to his knuckles, and the weight of exhaustion pressed into his shoulders. He carried nothing but his work bag, a bottle of water, and the kind of patience you learn to keep on standby when you're black in America. The patrol car rolled up behind him, slow, deliberate. The tires didn't squeal, the door didn't slam. But Isaiah knew what was coming. He had lived this scene before. "Hey!" the voice barked from behind him. Isaiah stopped, turned slowly, hands already out to his sides. "Everything all right, officer?" The cop stepped forward, white, buzz-cut, maybe late 30s, the kind of guy who treated his badge like a trophy and his flashlight like a weapon. "You live around here?" he asked, already suspicious. "Yes, sir. 2 blocks down. I'm just getting off work. Mind if I see some ID?" Isaiah reached carefully into his bag and handed it over. The officer didn't look at it. Not really. He just stared at Isaiah's face like it didn't match the idea in his head. "What's in the bag?" "Tools, work clothes." "Pop it open." Isaiah hesitated for half a second, just enough for the officer to take a step closer. "What? You got something to hide?" "No, sir." He unzipped the bag slowly, revealing a wrench, a rag, a stained T-shirt, and a military challenge coin that slid loose from the side pocket. The officer didn't notice the coin. His eyes were fixed on Isaiah's hoodie. "Why you out here dressed like that?" he said. "Dressed like what?" "Like you're casing the neighborhood." Isaiah exhaled sharply through his nose. "I just got off work, man." "Oh, so now it's man, huh?" The cop stepped forward, pulled out a pair of cuffs. "Turn around." Isaiah's heart began to thump, not out of fear, but frustration. He'd done nothing wrong, said nothing wrong, but the story was already being written for him. He turned. The metal touched his wrists. Click, click. "You people always act calm like it's gonna save you," the cop muttered with a smirk. Isaiah didn't respond. He didn't flinch, and that made the officer laugh, until the corner of Isaiah's shirt lifted slightly, and there, pinned to the inside of his undershirt, tarnished but unmistakable, was a silver star medal. The cop's laughter stopped cold. His eyes narrowed. He stepped back and grabbed the hem of Isaiah's shirt. "What the hell is this?" Isaiah turned his head, his voice low and steady. "That's a silver star, awarded in Afghanistan, 2013, for saving 4 lives under enemy fire." The silence between them shifted, because in that moment, the cop wasn't looking at a suspect. He was staring at a soldier, a hero, a man who had bled for a country that now handcuffed him for walking home. The officer's hand lingered on the edge of Isaiah's shirt, fingers trembling slightly as he stared at the medal. For a moment, the street went still. No cars, no sirens, no voices. Just 2 men, one in a uniform, the other wearing something far more earned. He let go of the fabric like it had burned him. Isaiah stood motionless, hands cuffed behind his back, chest rising and falling in slow, steady rhythm. Not defiant, not apologetic, just present, entirely present. The cop took a step back, the smirk from earlier gone. "This yours?" he asked. Isaiah didn't turn his head. "Did you think I stole it?" The question landed like a slap, not loud but undeniable. The officer didn't answer. Instead, he looked down, suddenly remembering he still had Isaiah's ID in his hand. He read it for the first time. Isaiah Reed, age 34, veteran, mechanic, Chicago born and raised. No record, no warrants, just a man walking home. You served? The officer asked, voice quieter now. Isaiah didn't respond. I asked you a question. I don't owe you anything, Isaiah said evenly. His voice didn't crack, his eyes didn't shift. I did my time. I served this country. I watched friends die in places you've only seen on a screen. And now I come home, and I can't walk down my own street without being profiled by the people I risked my life to protect. The officer swallowed hard. There was a beat of silence. Then another patrol unit pulled up behind them. Back up. Another officer stepped out, younger, female, eyes scanning the scene with practiced detachment. What's going on? She asked. The first officer hesitated. He didn't know what to say. He looked at Isaiah, at the cuffs, at the medal, at the raw shame blooming beneath his badge. The rookie officer stepped closer. Why is he in cuffs? The senior officer didn't answer. Instead, he fumbled with his keys and stepped toward Isaiah. I'm going to remove these now, he said, barely above a whisper. Isaiah turned his head slightly. Because I'm a veteran, or because you realized I'm not who you assumed I was? The keys shook slightly in the officer's hand. The cuffs came off. Isaiah rolled his wrists, not in anger, but to feel his skin again, to feel the dignity that had never actually left him. The younger officer looked confused, unsure of what had happened. She didn't know the history, didn't know the insult that had just taken place. Isaiah turned to her. I was walking home, he said. That's all. Then he looked back at the officer who had cuffed him. His eyes weren't filled with hate. They were filled with something far more uncomfortable. Clarity. You don't get to uncuff that, Isaiah said. The officer didn't reply, because deep down he knew. There are some things you can't unlock with a key. Isaiah didn't go home right away. Instead, he walked 2 more blocks, found an all-night diner, and sat at the corner booth near the window. He ordered coffee he wouldn't drink, opened his phone, and stared at the blinking cursor on his notes app. He hadn't planned to say anything. Not publicly. Not again. He had spent years letting these moments go. The looks, the slow patrol cars, the questions that weren't questions. He always chose peace over confrontation. Always. But this time felt different, because this time there were cuffs. This time there was laughter. And this time there was a medal between the two. He wrote, Tonight, a police officer handcuffed me while I was walking home from work, not because I did anything, because of how I looked. He laughed while doing it. Then he saw the silver star under my shirt. Suddenly, I was no longer a threat, just a veteran. He hit post, and the world lit up. By morning, Isaiah's name was trending on every platform. Local news picked up the story first. Then, national outlets followed. Veteran detained while walking home. Recognition only after medal exposed. News anchors debated policies. Commentators threw around buzzwords. Implicit bias, protocol, chain of command. But none of them talked about the part that mattered most. The humiliation. The way Isaiah's dignity had to be proven to be acknowledged. At the precinct, Officer Grayson sat in the locker room, his badge on the bench beside him. He hadn't told his wife what happened. He didn't know how to explain it. Because how do you explain that the man you cuffed was the kind of man you were taught to call a hero, that you laughed while arresting someone who had seen more in one tour of duty than you had in your entire career? He replayed the moment over and over. The way Isaiah didn't raise his voice, didn't beg, didn't call names. He just stood there with that medal, with that truth. And that truth was louder than any siren. Meanwhile, Isaiah stood outside the mechanic shop where he worked, phone buzzing with media requests, interview offers, and apology statements from city officials he'd never even met. His boss came outside. You okay? Isaiah nodded. Yeah, just tired. You want time off? Isaiah shook his head. I've had enough time away from who I am. I need to get back to being that. His boss nodded slowly. We're proud of you, for how you handled it, for everything. Isaiah turned toward the shop. He didn't want a camera. He didn't want a podium. He didn't want to be the next face of the conversation. He just wanted the freedom to walk down the street without carrying his entire resume in his back pocket. Freedom he had bled for overseas and still had to earn back home. The knock on the door was soft, hesitant. Isaiah looked through the peephole. He knew who it was before he saw the face. Officer Grayson stood there, not in uniform, not with backup. Just jeans, a windbreaker, and something even more unfamiliar on his face, humility. Isaiah considered not opening it, but something in him said, "Let him see you, not just remember you." He opened the door. Grayson cleared his throat. "Mr. Reed, I wanted to speak to you. Off the record. No precinct, no lawyers, just me." Isaiah didn't move. Grayson swallowed hard. "I know I'm the last person you want to see right now." "You're not wrong," Isaiah replied. "Still," Grayson shifted uncomfortably. "I came because I saw the post, the comments. I saw what people are saying about you, about me, about the system. And I can't stop thinking about it." Isaiah stepped aside without a word. Grayson entered. The apartment was small but clean. Framed photos lined the wall. Family, military buddies, his mother in her church dress. On the coffee table sat the silver star, not displayed, just placed, as if it needed to be present without being a weapon. Grayson sat stiffly on the edge of the couch. "I read about what you did. Afghanistan. That day in 2013. You saved your unit." Isaiah nodded once. "I didn't know," Grayson continued. "You didn't ask," Isaiah said. Grayson winced. "You're right." He stared at his hands for a long moment. "I didn't come here to justify anything. What I did was wrong. All of it, the assumptions, the way I handled it, the way I laughed." His voice cracked. "I've arrested a lot of people, some who deserved it, some who didn't. But that night, when I saw that medal, I realized it wasn't just about you. It was about me, what I've been trained to see, what I chose to see." Isaiah didn't speak. "You didn't get angry," Grayson said. "You didn't shout. That somehow made it worse." Isaiah leaned forward. "Do you know how exhausting it is," he said quietly, "to carry a resume around in your chest, to walk down your own street and wonder if today's the day someone sees your skin before they see your humanity?" Grayson nodded, ashamed. "I thought I was a good cop," he said. "I thought that meant I couldn't be racist. But bias doesn't always look like shouting slurs. Sometimes it looks like a laugh while putting on handcuffs." The room was still. No noise. Just the sound of two men breathing the same air, finally. Isaiah looked him in the eye. "I'm not interested in your guilt or your apology." Grayson blinked. "I want you to change, not just for me, for the next person you pull over, for the next kid walking home in a hoodie." Grayson stood. "I will." Isaiah nodded. At the door, Grayson paused. "Do you want to file a formal complaint?" Isaiah shook his head. "No, but I want you to remember this. Every time you wear that badge." Grayson opened the door slowly. "I already do." And with that he left. 2 weeks later, the press conference didn't look like any Isaiah had ever seen. No flashy backdrop, no PR stunt, no celebration of arrests or crime drops. Just a podium, a microphone, and Officer Grayson standing in front of a wall of cameras with his badge in his hand, not on his chest, but resting in his palm. He looked tired, but clear. "I'm here today," he said, "not because I was forced to be. Not because of disciplinary action, but because I need to say something publicly that I should have said privately a long time ago." He paused, looked straight into the camera. 2 weeks ago, I stopped a man on his way home. Isaiah Reed. I made assumptions about who he was, based on how he looked, and then I handcuffed him, without cause. I did it while laughing. Murmurs moved through the crowd. I later found out Mr. Reed is a veteran, a hero, a recipient of the Silver Star. But the truth is, it shouldn't take a medal for someone to be treated with respect. The fact that I only saw his humanity after I saw his service is my failure, not his. He placed his badge on the podium. I am stepping away from the force temporarily by choice to participate in bias training and community outreach, because accountability isn't just about punishment, it's about growth. He walked away without taking questions. Maya Phillips, a local journalist, had followed the story closely. She wasn't surprised by the press conference. What surprised her was Isaiah's refusal to play the part the media wanted. He had declined every major network appearance. He had turned down a book deal, even refused a seat on a televised town hall. Instead, he had gone back to work at the mechanic shop. And after hours, he volunteered at a local youth center, teaching teens how to rebuild engines and how to navigate a world that didn't always see them clearly. When asked why he stayed quiet through the noise, Isaiah told Maya one sentence: "If I speak, it's not to be famous, it's to make sure the next kid doesn't need a medal to be seen." That quote became a mural on the side of the very precinct where he was once handcuffed. It showed Isaiah, not in uniform, not with his medal, but in his hoodie, holding a wrench in one hand and the silver star in the other. Next to him, a boy, maybe 12, mirroring his stance. The caption beneath it: "Respect doesn't need permission." Back at the precinct, training protocols began to shift. Officers were now required to complete immersive empathy simulations, ride-alongs with veterans, community panels led by citizens who had once been stopped, silenced, and ignored. Isaiah wasn't on any official committee, but his presence was everywhere, in conversations, in questions that used to go unasked, in the silence that people were no longer allowed to call normal. And for the first time, the department wasn't reacting out of fear of headlines. It was responding to the truth. Because one story, one walk home, one set of cuffs, one medal had shattered the illusion that bias was always loud or obvious. Sometimes it laughs, and sometimes it gets quiet enough to finally listen. The street looked the same: cracked pavement, flickering street lamps, the low hum of distant traffic. But something had changed. Isaiah walked that same stretch of sidewalk, just like he did every night after work. But this time, no flashing lights followed him, no engine slowing behind his steps, no voice demanding answers before offering any. This time, he walked as himself. The hoodie still hung loose over his shoulders, his boots still heavy with grease and wear. But now, they carried more than exhaustion. They carried memory. He paused by the diner window, the same booth, the same neon glow, the place where he wrote the words that shook the city. He didn't go inside. He didn't need to. He walked on. Further down the block, he passed a group of teens, loud, joking, roughhousing the way boys do when they're still learning where their edges are. One of them noticed him, elbowed the others. "That's the dude. The one with the medal." Isaiah stopped. The boy stepped forward, maybe 15, hoodie zipped up, chin lifted high. "You really saved people. In the war." Isaiah looked at him. "Yeah, but saving people doesn't just happen out there," he said, pointing at the horizon. "It starts here." He tapped the boy's chest. "In how we show up for each other." The boy nodded slowly. "They say you didn't yell. You didn't fight back." Isaiah smiled. "I did fight. Just not the way they expect us to." Another boy asked, "Why didn't you tell him who you were?" Isaiah's answer came without hesitation: "Because who I am shouldn't have to be explained." They stood in silence for a moment. Then the first boy held out his hand, not for a handshake, for a grip. Brotherhood. Isaiah clasped it firm, real. "Keep walking proud," he said. The boys nodded and ran off down the street, louder than before, but somehow lighter. Later that night, Isaiah sat on the roof of his apartment building. City lights blinked like distant stars. The noise below was muffled. Sirens, laughter, the occasional horn, all reminders that the world was still messy. But tonight, it wasn't cruel. He pulled out his sketchbook, something he hadn't touched in months, and began to draw, not war, not medals, not protests, just a sidewalk, a man walking, and no one stopping him. He titled it, "Still Here," because he was, and that mattered more than any medal ever could.